Last week, inflation hit 8.5%, the highest it's been since 1981, 40 years. And much of this was fueled by the rise in gas prices, which have risen to $5 or even $6 a gallon where I live in California. This is direct pain at the pump, and it's also indirect pain because it makes other things more expensive to make and ship. Now, the pain at the pump, of course, is tough for American families and threatens the otherwise strong economic recovery after the pandemic. But it's more than that. High gas prices threaten to weaken American resolve against Putin's invasion of Ukraine. High oil prices, despite sanctions, also lead to more money to fund Putin's war machine and pension regime. Finally, if you think it's critical January 6th can never happen again, you have to accept the sad reality. If gas prices and inflation are this high, these midterms look like they will be a bloodbath for Democrats and the 10 Republicans who have pushed for accountability. If gas prices fall and inflation eases, there's hope. So for American families, for Ukraine, and for the future of our free republic, we need to reduce gas prices. We've seen some ideas to address gas prices and inflation. President Biden has ordered releasing the Strategic Petroleum Reserve. He's approved more drilling on federal lands. He's called for blending more ethanol this summer. The Federal Reserve is raising interest rates. In California, Governor Newsom is sending a gas rebate to commuters. Others have called for more drilling on private lands, more bikes, bike lanes, public transport, more electric cars, lowering the gas tax. Some of these are reasonable ideas, but there's a few problems. They probably can't lower gas prices significantly this year. Some ideas might even unintentionally raise gas prices or food prices. And this hodgepodge of ideas is too scattered to inspire the kind of global effort we need. If anything, they kind of assume we're all too shallow to do the right thing. Like the most selfish person on Twitter is the rational actor that represents the average American. This is not the case. What we need is a global effort to reduce oil consumption until the war ends. Specifically, we need to bring oil consumption down 10% from about 100 million barrels a day to 91 million barrels a day. Think this is impossible? Think this is just wild dreaming on a whiteboard? No. The world did this in 2020 in response to the pandemic. The price of oil fell from $60 to $20 a barrel. The price of gasoline fell from around $4 a gallon to $1.80 a gallon. Why does this work? Because the price of oil reflects the cost of a marginal barrel of oil. Let's do an example. When the world uses a lot of oil, we first buy from all the cheap fields, and then we move on to the expensive oil fields. The market price is the price of that last expensive field. Let's say that's $100 a barrel to get that field to operate. Okay, now let's say we reduce consumption. We shave off those last expensive barrels. We turn off those inefficient oil fields. We get everything we need from the fields that cost $60 or less per barrel. The price of oil falls to $60 a barrel. In other words, we reduced consumption by 10% and reduced the price of oil by 40%. That's even better than it sounds if you're a consumer. You save entirely for that last 10% you didn't buy, and you paid 40% less for the oil you did consume. It's good for pretty much everyone except the oil producer. And that matters in our domestic politics, and we have to think through that. In the rest of this video, I'm going to focus on a 3-part plan to reduce oil consumption. If those go well, I want to make 3 more videos that address some of the broader issues here. I want to explain how this really hurts Russia and could end the war. I want to argue that we should approach oil reduction in a way that still motivates domestic oil producers to drill cheap American oil that keeps the pressure on Putin and reduces OPEC's leverage. And then I also want to explain why a reasonable approach today, a balanced approach today, leads to a cleaner planet tomorrow. Bottom line, we can't stop climate change if we lose the republic to authoritarianism. Okay, but for now, let's focus on why we need a global movement to do our only fast option, reduce oil consumption to 91 million barrels a day. We have 3 ways to do this quickly: work from home, carpool, and get the few electric and fuel efficient vehicles out there to the long commuters. Okay, work from home. During COVID, many of us learned to work from home. I am working from home right now. Census survey found 1 in 3 homes were working from home more frequently. These, of course, tend to be high-income workers. Not everyone can do it. But until the war ends, employers should find ways to help employees work from home again. Don't bring them all back. We especially need to address the hardest part of working from home, childcare. But that's going to be easier because the pandemic numbers are down. We should look at some realistic ideas to help home workers stay productive without going bankrupt, and this is going to reduce oil consumption a lot. Okay, then let's say you do have to go into work. Carpooling. When you carpool with a coworker who lives by you, you cut your oil consumption in half. But Americans don't carpool. The latest data I found is old. It's from 2013. It says 76% of Americans commute to work alone. Now, for a long time, it was inconvenient and strange to find a carpooler, especially when you're rushing to work. But that was before widespread adoption of Uber, Lyft, car sharing. The world has figured out how to find you a convenient, safe ride near you. We need to challenge our best entrepreneurs to work with employers and develop apps that make it really easy to open up your smartphone and find a carpooler. Elon Musk at Tesla, John Zimmer at Lyft, whoever runs Google Maps, I'm sure you can figure this out in a couple weeks. We need the government to then give drivers incentives for carpooling. Imagine getting $10 a day for using the Lyft Ukraine carpool feature. A lot of people would do it, and this would take a lot of oil off the demand side. Okay, idea 3, targeting electric and fuel efficient vehicles. When you drive an electric car, you eliminate your gas consumption. Now, I love electric cars. I worked on them for many years. I think they are a major part of our clean energy future. But here's the problem. There aren't that many electric cars today. In 2021, the world bought 6.5 million plug-in cars, and that was a record year. But there are 1 to 2 billion cars, trucks, and buses on the road burning some form of petroleum. So electric cars aren't even 1% of the cars right now. Now, today's subsidies were really designed for a long-term transition. In 2009, the US government made a massive effort to help the private sector manufacture vehicles, batteries, power electronics, and more. They provided large incentives to buyers. This helped lower the cost of EVs and accelerate them to the market. And these have been successful. The EV industry is real. There's been a ton of innovation, and it is challenging the 100-year dominance of combustion engines. But the government incentives for this long-term transition do not make sense for a short-term goal, which is reducing oil consumption right now. The federal government gives everyone up to $7,500 to buy an EV, states thousands more. But these are available to everyone, even if you just park your EV in your garage and do nothing to reduce oil consumption. For the next 12 months, Congress should retarget these subsidies to the longest commuters. There's a small percent of US drivers who use a lot of gasoline. 8% of drivers drive more than 35 miles a day. For the next 12 months, let's give real big incentives and get the 6.5 million cars or more that are purchased into the hands of the world's longest commuters. That will get us a lot of bang for your buck to reduce oil consumption. Now, there's going to be questions. How can we prove they've been driving? During COVID, we saw how easily programs can be defrauded. That's because the Trump administration chose speed over accountability. You can debate if that made sense during the pandemic, but now we have some breathing room to do some basic checks. If you can prove your home address, if your employer can verify your work address and days in the office, you qualify. If you drive to multiple places of work, let's build some apps that can verify your past year's mileage. If you drove more than 10,000 miles last year, you qualify. There's a lot to discuss. There's a lot of details to debate, and there's probably other ways that are better to reduce oil consumption. My main point is, let's focus our conversation on a specific, achievable goal: 91 million barrels of oil a day. By coincidence, 91 is the year the Soviet Union collapsed, and 91 million barrels is the only solution that will make a real dent in gasoline prices now. It's really on the people and on entrepreneurs to make this work, bottoms up through their innovation, their action. But we need world leaders to coordinate and point us in the right direction through their leadership. As Ukrainians are bravely fighting Putin, and as our country reckons with attacks on our republic at home, let's reduce oil consumption here. Let's call on our allies around the world to do the same. If you like this video, join AverPoint. We're a news app that promotes healthy reading habits, critical thinking skills, and informed conversations and debates based on real evidence. Thank you.